The world was still in shock after the sudden passing of Matthew Perry. News channels, magazines, and social media platforms were filled with tributes and emotional posts. People remembered him for his quick wit, his charming presence, and the unforgettable role he played as Chandler Bing in the famous television show Friends. For years, Matthew had been a part of people's homes, making them laugh, making them feel connected, and giving them a reason to smile during difficult times. His loss was not only felt in Hollywood but also in every corner of the world where fans had grown up watching him. It was as if someone from the family had been taken away too soon. As tributes poured in from co-stars, directors, and close friends, people noticed something unusual. One name had been missing from the long list of voices: Keanu Reeves. Known for his quiet and private nature, Keanu was not the type to rush in front of cameras during emotional times. Still, the world had expected him to say something. For years, fans remembered that Matthew had once mentioned Keanu in a way that sparked gossip. Perry had joked in his book about Keanu, and the comment had spread quickly across the internet. Many wondered if there was tension between the two. And now, after Matthew's passing, the silence from Keanu seemed almost louder than words. Paparazzi camped outside Keanu's home, hoping to catch even a small reaction. Reporters filled articles with questions: why was Keanu quiet? Was he upset about the past comments? Did he feel distant from Matthew? The truth was, no one knew. Keanu Reeves was famous for being thoughtful and guarded with his emotions. He was loved not just for his movies but for his kindness, his humility, and the quiet wisdom he carried with him. People trusted that when he finally spoke, his words would matter. Behind the scenes, Keanu had been watching the coverage like everyone else. He saw old clips of Matthew making people laugh, old interviews where he spoke openly about his struggles, and fans posting stories about how friends had been a comfort during their darkest days. Keanu thought about the way the public sometimes forgets that actors are human beings too. They are not just characters on screen, but people with fears, with battles, with weaknesses, and with moments of great strength. As the days passed, the pressure on Keanu to respond only grew. His fans, who admired him for his honesty, wanted to hear his perspective. Was there truth in the rumors of tension? Would he dismiss Matthew's past remarks, or would he offer forgiveness? Everyone wanted an answer. The silence became a story on its own. Online discussions filled with arguments. Some believed Keanu should say nothing at all, while others felt he had to speak to clear the air. Keanu himself remained calm. He was not a man who liked to rush into the spotlight for the sake of headlines. He believed in taking his time, choosing his words carefully, and making sure they came from the heart. To him, Matthew was not just a public figure. He was a fellow actor, a man who had faced challenges, and someone who deserved respect in his memory. Keanu knew that whenever he chose to speak, the world would listen closely. During this time, he reflected on the rare interactions he had with Matthew. Though they were not close friends, their paths had crossed in Hollywood circles. Keanu remembered moments when Matthew had shown warmth and humor, moments that reminded him why people loved the actor so much. He thought about how fame often hides the personal battles people fight every day, and how easy it is for the world to focus on the wrong details. Meanwhile, the media continued to speculate. Some outlets repeated the old comments Matthew had made about Keanu, trying to create a bigger story of rivalry. Others defended both actors, reminding people that everyone says things they don't fully mean. For Keanu, none of this mattered. He was not thinking about drama or headlines. He was thinking about what it meant to lose someone who had shaped the culture of television, someone whose laughter had filled millions of living rooms across the world. Friends of Keanu noticed that he grew quieter than usual during this period. He often sat in his favorite cafe, sipping coffee and reading quietly, his mind far away. Fans who spotted him respected his silence. They saw in his face the thoughtful look of a man deciding how to honor someone in the right way. Keanu had always believed in kindness, even when others did not show the same to him. He believed that forgiveness was stronger than bitterness, and that grace was more powerful than revenge. The expectation around his eventual words built a sense of suspense. The world was waiting for something, but no one knew what. Would he defend himself? Would he share a personal memory? Would he avoid the subject entirely? What made the anticipation greater was Keanu's reputation. When he spoke, he did so with humility. When he acted, it was with purpose. People trusted him not to make a spectacle of grief, but to turn it into something meaningful. In those days of waiting, the world learned more about Matthew's journey. Articles spoke about his struggles with addiction, his efforts to help others, and his dream of being remembered for more than just laughter. Keanu read those stories too. He thought about how unfair life could be, how people who carried so much love inside them often carried pain as well. The thought made him quiet, almost meditative. And so, while the world kept waiting, Keanu prepared himself. He did not want to speak quickly, but when the time came, he wanted to speak truthfully. He knew his words could shape the way people remembered Matthew. He also knew his response could change how people understood forgiveness. For now, he remained silent, and that silence itself became the loudest part of the story. Everyone was holding their breath for the moment Keanu Reeves would finally speak. Keanu Reeves finally chose the moment to break his silence. It was not at a flashy red carpet event, nor at a press conference filled with bright lights and shouting voices. True to his nature, he selected a quiet and thoughtful setting where his words would not be drowned out by noise. It was a small, intimate interview, not with a sensationalist tabloid but with a respected journalist who had known him for years. The room was calm, the background simple, and the atmosphere almost felt like a conversation between friends rather than a worldwide revelation. Keanu wanted his message to be heard clearly, without exaggeration, without distraction. When he first began speaking, his voice was steady, yet gentle. He started by acknowledging the loss that so many people were feeling. He spoke about Matthew Perry's unique ability to make people laugh, to bring comfort through humor, and to lighten even the heaviest moments with his sharp timing and warm smile. Matthew gave the world laughter, Keanu said quietly, and laughter is one of the greatest gifts a human being can give. His words immediately touched hearts. Viewers felt the sincerity behind them. This was not a carefully written script from a publicist, it was one man honoring another in the most genuine way. As the interview continued, Keanu went deeper, surprising those who had expected only a few safe, surface-level remarks. He began to share stories, not of flashy Hollywood parties or glamorous film sets, but of small, human encounters with Matthew. He remembered a time when he had been going through a difficult period in his personal life, and though they were not particularly close, Matthew had noticed. Instead of ignoring it, Matthew had gone out of his way to crack a joke, to break the tension, and to offer a moment of relief. Keanu smiled faintly as he recalled it, saying, "Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can feel like the biggest thing in the world." He had that gift. These memories were unknown to the public, and they painted Matthew in a different light. The world had mostly seen the actor through the lens of his character Chandler or through media stories about his struggles. Keanu was now showing people another side, a side of Matthew that was caring, observant, and quietly compassionate. This was the Matthew that most people had never heard about, and Keanu's words brought that hidden humanity to the surface. Then, with a pause, Keanu addressed the elephant in the room. Everyone knew about the remarks Matthew had once made about him in his book. Fans had debated them endlessly online. Some had even speculated that Keanu had been hurt or angered by those comments. The moment was heavy, and the interviewer gave him space to respond in his own time. Keanu took a breath and then spoke with the calmness of someone who had thought long and hard about forgiveness. "People say things," he said softly. "Sometimes words come out in ways that don't reflect the whole truth of who they are or what they feel. I've never been someone to hold on to words. What matters is the person behind them. Those listening were stunned. They had expected maybe a polite dismissal, but not such grace. Keanu was not only letting go of any bitterness, he was actively choosing to honor Matthew beyond the mistakes or missteps of words. Matthew was more than a sentence in a book, Keanu continued. He was a person with struggles, with dreams, with a heart. And I would rather remember him for the laughter and the kindness he shared than for anything else. The interviewer, visibly moved, asked him what he thought Matthew's true legacy should be. Keanu's eyes softened as he replied, I think his legacy is connection. He had the ability to connect with people, to remind them of the humor in everyday life. Even when he was in pain himself, he found a way to give joy to others. That is something extraordinary. That is what should be remembered. By now, the audience watching felt their own emotions rising. The internet had been buzzing with speculation and gossip for days, and here was Keanu gently sweeping all that aside. He was replacing rumors with compassion, replacing division with unity. His voice carried not just words, but wisdom. Forgiveness, kindness, and humanity were his message, and it struck deeply with everyone who heard it. The journalist pressed further, asking Keanu why he had stayed silent for so long before speaking. His answer was simple yet powerful. Sometimes silence is the most respectful thing you can offer, he said. It gives space for others to grieve, and it gives you time to reflect. But eventually, words are needed not to make noise, but to bring peace. This answer stunned many who heard it. In an age where people often rush to social media to share quick thoughts, Keanu had chosen patience. He had waited until he could speak from the heart, until he could speak words that mattered. His silence had not been avoidance, it had been respect. From there, Keanu shared more reflections about Matthew's struggles with addiction and mental health. He did not speak in a judgmental way but in a compassionate one. He acknowledged how difficult it must have been for Matthew to live in the public eye while fighting such battles. We sometimes forget that fame does not protect people from pain, Keanu said. If anything, it can make it harder. But Matthew fought with courage, and he used his story to try to help others. That is something noble. These words resonated deeply with fans who had followed Matthew's journey. Many remembered how he had tried to support others facing similar struggles, how he had opened up about his own challenges in hopes that it might give comfort to someone else. Hearing Keanu recognize that effort felt like validation, a way of ensuring Matthew's struggles were not in vain. As the interview drew on, Keanu's calm presence filled the room. Every word felt carefully chosen, not for effect but for honesty. He was not trying to make himself look good, nor was he trying to erase the past. He was simply speaking as a human being about another human being who had left too soon. And that simplicity made the message all the more powerful. By the end of the conversation, those watching felt they had witnessed something rare in the world of celebrity culture. It was not drama, not scandal, not headlines built on conflict. It was dignity. It was grace. It was one man choosing to honor another in the most meaningful way. When the interview was over, silence filled the room for a moment before the cameras turned off. Even the interviewer seemed lost in thought, touched by the depth of Keanu's words. For those who later saw the interview, the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Clips spread across social media, and fans began sharing how moved they were. Many admitted they had been expecting anger or bitterness, but instead, they found forgiveness and compassion. What Keanu revealed that day was more than just his feelings about Matthew Perry. He revealed something about himself, about his way of seeing the world. He reminded people that kindness and grace are not weaknesses but strengths. He showed that it is possible to rise above gossip, above conflict, and to choose peace. The interview ended, but its impact was only just beginning. Around the world, people replayed his words, quoted his lines, and shared their own reflections about forgiveness and compassion. For Matthew's fans, It felt like a healing moment. For Keanu's fans, it was another reason to admire him. For everyone, it was a reminder that in times of grief, the most powerful thing we can give each other is humanity. When Keanu Reeves continued speaking about Matthew Perry, the moment everyone had been waiting for finally arrived. People leaned closer to their screens, knowing that he would eventually address the remarks Matthew had once made about him. For years, that one small passage from Perry's book had been repeated, analyzed, and sometimes twisted into something bigger than it really was. Fans had turned it into a symbol of tension between the two men. Some even imagined there was a secret rivalry, though neither had ever fueled those rumors. Now the time had come for Keanu to clear the air, and the world waited for his reaction. The interviewer, with careful respect, asked the question directly. Matthew mentioned your name once in his book. Many people still talk about it. Did that hurt you? The room seemed to grow silent. It was the kind of question that could have easily led to anger or defensiveness. But Keanu was not that kind of man. He sat for a moment, his expression calm, his eyes thoughtful. Then he answered in his quiet, steady voice. Words are just words, he said. Sometimes people say things that don't come from a place of anger, but maybe from pain, from confusion, or even just from humor that doesn't land the right way. I never held onto those words. His answer surprised many. Instead of defending himself or criticizing Matthew, he chose to rise above it. He reminded people that no one is perfect, and that every person, even celebrities, can say things they later wish they hadn't. He went on, what matters is not a sentence in a book. What matters is the person. And Matthew was a person worth remembering not for one remark, but for the way he made people laugh, for the way he touched lives, for the humanity he showed even while struggling himself. The sincerity in his tone struck deeply. For fans, it was like a heavy weight had been lifted. The story of conflict, which the media had stretched for years, dissolved in that moment. Keanu spoke with grace, explaining that he believed in forgiveness. If we all judged each other only by the words we've spoken in moments of stress, none of us would stand without fault, he said. I would rather remember Matthew for his gifts than hold onto a passing remark. His words carried wisdom, a gentle reminder to everyone listening about the power of letting go. Instead of choosing anger, he chose compassion. Instead of making the moment about himself, he shifted the focus back to Matthew's legacy. The reaction from fans was immediate. Social media lit up with shock and admiration. People wrote about how rare it was to see such humility in Hollywood, where ego often ruled. Keanu doesn't just act like a hero on screen, one fan posted, he acts like one in real life too. Another wrote, this is why we love him, he teaches us forgiveness without even trying. The interviewer, moved by his words, asked if he had ever considered responding back when Matthew's comments first became public. Keanu shook his head slightly, his voice calm as he explained. No. Silence was my answer then. Because sometimes silence is not weakness, it is strength. It is refusing to feed negativity. And now, after his passing, I think the best way to honor him is not to focus on what he said about me, but what he gave to the world. His response felt almost like a lesson, not just about Matthew Perry but about life itself. People began to share stories of their own experiences, times when someone had said something hurtful, but instead of clinging to it, they chose to forgive. Keanu's words inspired them to look at their own lives with a softer heart. In the days following the interview, articles were written praising Keanu's response. Headlines captured the shock, Keanu forgives and honors Perry, and Reeves turns rumored feud into lesson on kindness. Even celebrities commented online, calling his reaction classy, powerful, and the kind of grace the world needs more of. What could have been just another piece of Hollywood gossip transformed into a global conversation about forgiveness, humanity, and compassion. But for Keanu, it was not about praise or admiration. It was simply about doing what he felt was right. Those close to him said he never enjoyed being the center of attention. He was not interested in making his words go viral. All he wanted was to show respect for Matthew's memory, for the fans mourning him, and for the truth that kindness is stronger than bitterness. During the interview, Keanu also shared something that touched people even more deeply. He spoke about the times when Matthew, despite his own personal battles, had used humor to lighten other people's pain. He carried a heavy weight, Keanu said, but even with that weight, he found ways to lift others. The words were simple, but they carried enormous meaning. They reminded everyone that Perry's struggles did not define him. His laughter, his kindness, his ability to bring people together, those were the things that truly mattered. By choosing to highlight this side of Matthew, Keanu gave fans a gift. Instead of focusing on a single negative remark, he painted a fuller picture of who Matthew was, a man with flaws, yes, but also with a heart that wanted to help others. That perspective encouraged people to remember Matthew with compassion, not judgment. The interviewer closed the subject by thanking Keanu for his honesty. But the effect of his words continued to ripple long after the cameras were turned off. Fans across the globe were left not only shocked by what he said but also changed by it. His calm, forgiving nature challenged them to think differently about their own grudges, their own conflicts, and their own memories of people they had lost. Keanu's choice to forgive publicly became a quiet but powerful example of leadership. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't point fingers, and he didn't dramatize the past. He simply offered peace. And in doing so, he gave people something far greater than a celebrity soundbite. He gave them hope. In the following days, fans began to share not only clips of the interview but also their personal reflections. Some wrote about how they decided to forgive a family member they had been distant from. Others said his words encouraged them to stop holding on to hurtful memories of people who were no longer alive. In their grief for Matthew Perry, they found healing in Keanu Reeves's message. It was clear that what shocked everyone was not the fact that Keanu finally spoke, but the way he spoke. People had expected bitterness or at least a defensive explanation. Instead, they received wisdom wrapped in kindness. He reminded the world that life is too short to carry anger, especially against those who are no longer here to explain themselves. And so, Keanu Reeves transformed what could have been another headline of conflict into a story of grace. His response became a symbol of forgiveness in action, teaching people that the most powerful way to honor someone's memory is not to hold onto the past but to let it go. The interview with Keanu Reeves spread across the world like wildfire. Within hours of its release, clips of his calm and heartfelt words filled social media feeds. News channels played his quotes repeatedly, and fans shared them with emotional captions. What was meant to be a quiet reflection soon became one of the most talked about stories in Hollywood. Headlines captured the essence of his message: Keanu chooses forgiveness, Reeves honors Perry's legacy, and kindness over conflict. It was not just another celebrity statement, it was something deeper, something that touched the hearts of millions. The most surprising reaction came from fans of both Keanu and Matthew. For years, online discussions had fueled the idea of tension between the two. People had argued about what Matthew meant with his remark, whether Keanu had been hurt, and whether the silence meant there was bitterness. Now, all of that seemed pointless. Keanu's interview shifted the focus. Instead of debating conflict, people began to share gratitude. Instead of repeating gossip, they shared memories. Fans of Matthew Perry flooded timelines with clips of his best moments on Friends. They posted his funniest lines, his quick-wit comebacks, and his most heartfelt scenes. Others shared interviews where Matthew spoke openly about his struggles and how much he wanted to help others. For many, Keanu's words felt like permission to remember Matthew with kindness, not controversy. They realized that even in his hardest times, Matthew had given joy to countless people, and that gift was priceless. At the same time, Keanu's own fans felt an even deeper admiration for him. He had always been respected for his humility and quiet nature, but this moment showed his true character. He had chosen to be gentle when the world expected sharpness. He had chosen to be forgiving when the world expected distance. It reminded people why he was so beloved, not just as an actor but as a person. His reaction became an example of grace in a world that often rewards anger and drama. Even celebrities joined in. Some of Matthew's friends' co-stars reposted Keanu's words, calling them beautiful and dignified. Other actors, musicians, and directors expressed their respect, saying the world needed more voices like his, voices that brought peace instead of noise. A famous director tweeted, "Keanu Reeves just reminded us all how to be human." The praise was genuine and widespread, but Keanu himself did not seek it. He stayed quiet after the interview, letting his words stand on their own without adding anything more. What shocked everyone was the ripple effect. Keanu's reflection inspired fans to share their own stories of forgiveness. People wrote about letting go of old grudges, calling relatives they hadn't spoken to in years, and finding peace in memories of loved ones they had lost. One person wrote, "Keanu helped me realize that remembering the good in someone is more healing than holding on to the hurt." Another said, "I forgave my friend today because of what Keanu said. Life is too short." His words had gone beyond Hollywood, they were influencing everyday lives in quiet but powerful ways. Meanwhile, journalists noticed something unusual. Normally, when a celebrity makes a statement, the media looks for controversy, for something to debate. But this time, there was almost nothing to argue about. Keanu's words were so calm, so compassionate, that even critics found themselves moved. Instead of writing articles filled with speculation, many writers reflected on their own experiences of loss, grief, and forgiveness. The conversation shifted from celebrity drama to something universal, the need to show kindness in times of pain. In Hollywood, where image often matters more than substance, this was rare. Industry insiders admitted that Keanu had once again shown why he stood apart. While others might have used the moment to defend themselves or gain attention, Keanu had chosen dignity. He didn't try to clear his name or change public opinion. He simply honored Matthew Perry as a human being, and that honesty touched people more than any carefully polished speech ever could. At fan gatherings, people began to speak of the interview almost like a turning point. In online forums, someone wrote, "Keanu turned what could have been a feud into a lesson." Another added, "This is why he's special, he doesn't just act, he teaches us how to live." Many fans admitted they cried while watching his words, not because of sadness alone, but because of the beauty of forgiveness. The effect reached beyond Matthew's fans too. People who had never even followed Friends or read Perry's book were touched by Keanu's message. Teachers began sharing his quotes in classrooms, using them to explain kindness and empathy. Motivational speakers referred to his words as an example of true strength. Even spiritual leaders spoke about how forgiveness, like Keanu showed, was one of the most powerful ways to heal the heart. Back in Hollywood, some insiders revealed how Keanu had deliberately avoided turning the moment into a spectacle. He had refused to do a press tour, had declined to appear on multiple shows, and had chosen instead one small interview where his words could be heard clearly. His decision showed once again that he valued meaning over attention. This was not about him, it was about Matthew, about respect, and about humanity. Fans admired that. In a world where many rushed to social media within hours of big news, Keanu's choice to wait, reflect, and then speak with calmness seemed refreshing. His patience proved that sometimes the most powerful words are the ones that come after silence. People began to describe his approach as a model for how to handle grief and public pressure with grace. As the days turned into weeks, the interview continued to circulate. More people discovered it, and the message spread further. Every time someone watched, they found themselves reflecting not only on Matthew Perry's life but also on their own. What grudges was I holding onto? What memories could I heal by focusing on the good instead of the pain? These were the kinds of questions people asked themselves after hearing Keanu's words. It became clear that the shock was not in what Keanu revealed, but in the way he revealed it. People had expected drama, maybe even defensiveness, but what they received was healing. His quiet forgiveness reminded the world that kindness still had a place, even in an industry often ruled by rivalry and pride. His reflection united fans of two actors, healed old debates, and gave people a chance to grieve with dignity instead of gossip. And so, Keanu's words lived far beyond the moment of the interview. They became part of Matthew Perry's legacy too, not because they erased the past, but because they added to the story of who he was. Through Keanu's eyes, people remembered not only a beloved actor but also a man who had tried, in his own way, to bring light to others. That memory was far more powerful than any remark in a book, and it was the one that truly mattered. In the days that followed Keanu Reeves's interview, something remarkable happened. His words did not fade away like most celebrity headlines. Instead, they grew stronger, spreading across countries and languages. Newspapers reprinted his quotes, magazines analyzed the meaning behind them, and social media users shared them with captions about love, forgiveness, and healing. It was no longer just about Keanu and Matthew Perry, it had become about all of us. People around the world began to reflect on their own relationships. His words about forgiveness inspired countless fans to pick up the phone and call someone they had not spoken to in years. Some wrote letters to old friends, while others visited family members they had avoided. Stories began to surface online about people choosing peace over conflict because of what Keanu had said. One fan shared, "I haven't talked to my brother in 3 years. After hearing Keanu, I realized life is too short. I called him today, and we both cried." Another said, "I forgave my friend for something I thought I never could. Keanu reminded me that people are more than their mistakes." Keanu himself stayed quiet after the interview. He did not post anything on social media, nor did he appear on talk shows to extend the moment. That was never his style. Instead, he allowed the message to live on its own. For him, speaking once was enough. He believed that words lose meaning when they are repeated too many times. By staying silent afterward, he showed once again that it was not about fame or attention, it was about respect. The world, however, could not stop talking. People continued to discuss how rare it was for someone in Hollywood to show such humility. They compared Keanu's words to the usual celebrity reactions: quick, polished, and often self-centered. What shocked everyone most was not that he had spoken, but how he had spoken. There was no anger, no need to defend himself, no attempt to erase the past. Instead, he offered something timeless: compassion. In classrooms, teachers used his quotes as examples during lessons about empathy and forgiveness. In churches and community centers, leaders mentioned his words in speeches about kindness. Psychologists even noted how his approach could help people dealing with grief or resentment. His message had moved far beyond Hollywood gossip and had turned into a kind of wisdom people could carry into their daily lives. For Matthew Perry's fans, Keanu's reflection provided comfort. They had been mourning the loss of a man who made them laugh but also carried visible pain. Many felt conflicted, unsure of how to balance their love for his talent with their sadness for his struggles. Keanu's words gave them clarity. He reminded them that Matthew's legacy was not one remark in a book, nor the battles he fought in private. His legacy was the joy he gave, the laughter he shared, and the humanity he carried even through hardship. This helped fans focus on gratitude rather than sorrow. In quiet ways, Keanu's message also changed how people looked at grief. He showed that honoring someone does not mean forgetting their flaws, but choosing to remember the best parts of who they were. He showed that forgiveness is not weakness, but strength. And most importantly, he showed that kindness can live even in the hardest moments. Weeks later, people were still quoting him. Some printed his words on posters, while others wrote them in journals to keep as reminders. A popular magazine even released a cover story titled "The Lesson Keanu Gave the World," highlighting the way his statement had touched millions. The article explained that in an age of loud voices and endless arguments, Keanu's quiet wisdom had become a rare gift. For Matthew's family and close friends, the interview also brought peace. They appreciated the way Keanu had spoken with respect, choosing to highlight Matthew's kindness and humor instead of fueling old rumors. One family friend admitted in an interview, "What Keanu said meant more than we can explain. It helped us feel like people were seeing Matthew for who he really was, not just the struggles he faced." The impact was undeniable. Keanu Reeves had turned a potentially divisive story into a message of unity. He had taken a moment filled with gossip and transformed it into a conversation about love, forgiveness, and humanity. That was what shocked everyone most. People had expected something small, maybe a polite comment, maybe silence forever, but what they received was something much bigger, something that would stay with them for years. In the end, Keanu's decision to break his silence became more than just a celebrity news story. It became a life lesson. It reminded people that the way we speak about others matters, especially when they are no longer here to speak for themselves. It reminded people that forgiveness can bring healing not just to one person, but to many. And it reminded people that kindness, even in the smallest moments, can change the world. As time went on, the noise of the media faded, but the memory of Keanu's words stayed. Fans still shared Matthew Perry's funniest scenes, still laughed at his clever jokes, and still celebrated the joy he gave them. And alongside those memories, they carried Keanu's wisdom, a gentle voice reminding them to forgive, to remember the good, and to honor people with love. Keanu Reeves had not planned to shock the world. He had not planned to become the center of a lesson about humanity. He had simply spoken from the heart, and in doing so, he gave the world a gift. What shocked everyone was not only what he said, but how deeply it touched them. His words became a bridge between grief and healing, between judgment and compassion, between silence and understanding. And so, the story of Keanu Reeves and Matthew Perry became more than a headline. It became a reminder that in the end, we are all human. We all make mistakes, we all carry struggles, and we all have the chance to leave behind something good. Keanu chose to remember Matthew for his laughter, for his kindness, and for the light he carried in difficult times. In sharing that choice, he reminded the world to do the same, not only for Matthew, but for everyone we love and lose.